This video is brought to you by Shop Controller. Shop Controller handles all aspects of running an auto shop from appointment to invoice.
Manage jobs with custom workflows, statuses, and categories. It can help you get paid faster and gain access to accurate labor times.
Hundreds of shops use Shop Controller. Check them out in the link below.
Today we are taking our first drive in the brand new 1984 Honda Civic.
That's right, this car now has had a bunch of work done to it to make sure that it's going to run properly, and that means we get to take it finally, really for its maiden voyage.
Exactly, and in this video we're going to show you what we had to do to get this brand new 84 Civic running from the Honda collection, and then we're going to see what it's like to drive. But first, we have to put on some gear. Case, why does it look like we just came from Chernobyl?
Well, people don't like us touching this car with dirty hands.
So now we've ensured that will never happen again. Okay, the moment of truth. So, tell the folks how we ended up with a 1984 Honda Civic that has, here I'll show you on camera, 83 miles on the clock.
Yeah, so we put a couple miles on it in the process of getting it ready to be driven again, because what Honda did is they sent us this car out of their museum, out of their heritage collection, so that we could get it running, because they want us to drive this all the way from Colorado, where we're based and where the car is now, drive it all the way back to California, where it lives typically at Honda's facility.
This car has such a cool story. So this belongs to American Honda, and it was manufactured in 1984 and then never sold. So this was likely used for either advertising, PR, marketing, and it was just put in storage when it was done.
Exactly, and I think I might have actually found some of the marketing material that this car was used for and pulled off the assembly line to be shown with. And it's pretty cool because Honda wants us to drive this all the way back to California, and of course, before we do anything like that, we have to do quite a bit of work to this car to get it road ready, and that is what Andy has been toiling away at, so we can show some of that.
Yeah, Andy is our Honda mechanic. He's been doing it for over 37 years working on Hondas, and he agreed to take on this project. So let's cut to some of that footage and see some of the work he did to get this car on the road.
Gonna do timing belt, some more safety checks, and get this thing dialed in. This timing belt is really our biggest thing. So all you junior mechanics out there, when you work on vehicles, ground straps on your batteries, always best to disconnect. Oh yeah. See that little ledge right there?
Yeah.
And what we're gonna do, once I get this bottom cover off, we're gonna time this thing. See that where it says up? So we wanna get that number one cylinder set up on top dead center. And a lot of you folks messaging in on the first videos that we did, you know, you gotta replace that timing belt. Yes, for sure, because it is 40 years old. But heat cycles, fans, heat cycles is what this thing has not had. And I'm pretty sure of all my years of being a mechanic that this belt would make it to California without any problems. But that being said, Murphy's Law. We're just going to change it and not have any issues. That's all we can do. It's a new belt, you can tell. That's 40 years old. It's on there pretty tight. Honda original. We're going to keep that in the box, and it's going to go back with the car. Got to just attach my spring here to the pulley. This is still amazing to be able to work on this new car. But we are buttoned back up here. We're gonna do a quick oil change before I start it up. We're gonna drop the old oil that's 40 years old as well out of here. I'm gonna stick a 10W30 in here with the filter that's there. We're gonna rinse this out, drop it out, brand new filter, 1040 going back in it, and fresh oil for the trip.
All right, so this was the original timing belt off this 84 Civic that hadn't been changed since new. Walk me through the condition, because folks thought that this was going to be cracked within an inch of its life.
Well, I think you know, they would be right if it actually had 150,000 miles on it. Sure, even if the belt was that old, but only had 30,000 miles on it. Sure. Not enough mileage, and mostly it's not about mileage, it's heat cycles. The rubber side of this belt is in great condition. The people that wrote in were actually pretty accurate. It really comes down to heat cycles, and I was thinking, you know, one good 5 o'clock in the afternoon, stuck in rush hour, hot heat cycle, that would be maybe where this might get compromised. Alternator, pulley, everything was in great shape.
Great.
So really it was a fabulous situation. I'll tell you, the joy about this vehicle was just an alternator. No air conditioning, no power steering, there are no other things on this pulley but the alternator.
So Andy, we also went ahead and did fluids on this engine, and what did you find when you pulled the oil on a 40-year-old, never registered car?
Not much. It was, you know, it was clear. That's what I wanted to see. The first, when you pull the drain plug, was still pretty dark. I also did it with the motor cold. It was on the lift. It was overnight. I want stuff to fall down to the bottom. I don't want it collected in the filter. So really, the oil was in great shape, clarity-wise. Oil, you get separation of the base oil and everything else that's added to it, the additive package, whatever they throw into it. You can shake them back up, and that's all we did here to make it run, but in that process, I just wanted that oil out of there. So 100 miles on this oil, then we do a filter, and then we can run to California. There's not going to be any issues. Just fun to go through something that's brand new in 84, brand new in 24.
So Case, after many hours of work, a new fuel system, new fuel pump, new fuel lines, new fuel filters, it's got a new timing belt, he went through and checked the bearings, it's got new fluids. This car is on the road again, and it feels so good to be behind the wheel.
Which is one of the really cool things about it, because it's still brand new, and this motor is in great shape. The car is beautiful. He detailed it, made it look spotless, but there's still, even so, things that need to get done on this car. So these tires are basically brand new as far as the fact that there's no tread worn off of them, but they are pretty old. And because this car was just given tires to put into a museum, they aren't balanced. So as soon as you get going around 50 or so, the car starts to have a pretty bad wobble. So we really can't drive it on a fast road yet. And then we also noticed in messing with the car, and once Andy got it up on his lift, that at some point in this car's life, perhaps when it was being transported from one museum location to another, the exhaust pipe got bent. So there's a crease in it right now. So especially at idle, it's not as happy as it will be once we figure out getting a fresh, unbent section of pipe right there at the end. It's after the muffler. And then there's a few other minor things that we need to address on this car, but really, it's come quite a long way from not being able to run at all to now driving pretty well. It's come a huge way, Case, and I think one of the challenges about this car is that it's a carbureted Civic with, I think you counted 41 vacuum lines underneath the hood. Yeah, looking at the schematic for this carburetor and all the vacuum lines on it, it is a little daunting, and Andy and I had to pull that carb off many times, like he said, to actually get all of the varnish, the old fuel, out of it, because with heat cycles it just kept freeing up more and more that was clogging it up. So now the carb is very happy, other than the fact that, you know, we've got that pinch in the exhaust and that's not making it idle very happily. So it's running beautifully though. Yeah, right now with fresh oil in it and everything, we're able to take it out on the road a little bit so that this fresh oil can rinse out some of the old oil so that we can do another oil change in a few miles. And then once we've got a few more miles on it, then we can go through, do a valve adjustment, and actually continue the braking process that this car never had, because it is brand new. Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a unique experience, and it's amazing
to drive a car that's 40 years old with no miles on it, because it genuinely drives like a new car. And you and I both are big classic car fanatics. We've driven a ton of old cars. And even low mileage old cars still have a tendency to feel a little rickety, right? It's clear that they are old cars. This does not feel like an old car. I mean, and it's a reminder at both how far we have come in the automotive world and also how far we have not come at all, because it drives
awesome.
Not that differently than a brand new Civic. I mean, it's slow, but it's so smooth. That's the amazing part.
And the other interesting thing, too, are some of the things that we've found have happened to this car from it sitting for 40 years. So look, you know, Tommy and I, we're not mechanics, so we spend most of our weekends working on our own personal vehicles, and even on the channel, we've repainted a truck, we've pulled a couple motors, we've done this and that, but we're about as far from mechanics as we are from being the next Mr. Olympia.
Sure.
That's not what we do. And so through this whole process, we've learned a lot. And one of the things that we've learned is everything that happens to a car when it's been sitting for such a long time, and one of the ones that we didn't really expect, but it makes sense when you think about it, is that the suspension on this car had sat in place for so long without really moving that these shocks were kind of locked up. And so Andy had to go through a few different stages of putting the car up on the lift, letting the wheels sag, letting fluid move through the shocks, then setting it back down, and doing that a few times. Because at first when we drove it, it rode pretty stiff, and now it's riding more so the way that it should.
Yeah, it rides really, really well. Other than this light shake, we're doing 55 now, and it's got a little wobble in it from the unbalanced tires. It's so tight. The suspension is amazing.
And the tires are a bit flat spotted too, so getting fresh tires on this and getting them balanced, there's no wheel weights on this right now, so fresh tires and getting them balanced is really going to iron out some of the last things that this car needs. We also need to go through the braking system on it a little more, because it's braking better on 3 wheels than it is on that one other wheel, so it doesn't brake very straight, but a few more things to dial in, and man, this car is going to be perfect.
So I'm being kind of ginger with the accelerator, because this is a brand new engine. I don't want to bring it over like 3,000 RPM. We're just being super careful with it, making sure we're treating it well. And look, this is something we want to address in this video. We are very fortunate that Carl has chosen us to be kind of the folks to bring this car back to life, and we're incredibly appreciative of that opportunity. And I want to stress, you know, last time you did drive it with dirty hands, which was the wrong decision, and we do apologize to folks out there about it, but we are taking it really seriously. And for example, like every piece of OEM components that come off this car, we're saving.
Yeah.
And we're trying to replace those components with other OEM components.
And there's some aspects of it that we kind of got to figure out what we want to do with this car, because a lot of people's concerns with what we did with this car last go around were valid, but then there were also a lot of people that were upset that we drove it over gravel. And what Honda wants us to do with this car is road trip it all the way back to California.
Right.
Now, if we do that, it's gonna get bugs splattered on the front of it. It might get driven through rain.
Sure.
It might even get a rock chip or two, but that's what Honda wants us to do with it, because at the end of the day, this car spent the last 40 years in a museum, and that's really cool. But I actually made a video that featured this car when it was still in the museum, and less than 5,000 people watched it. And as much as people don't want to see wear and tear on this car, the last video that we did where we actually drove it, almost 500,000 people watched that. And that's what Honda wants. They want this car to stop just sitting around not really doing anything, and they want us to use it and drive it to California. But if people don't really want to see us put miles and wear and tear on the car, then I don't know, that's something that we got to figure out. What do we want to do with it? What do people want to see us do with this car?
The other thing, Case, that I think people don't necessarily realize is Honda is a very unique manufacturer in how they run their heritage collection. They are the only company that will let journalists take their cars out for a week loan.
That's true.
For a story. You know, and they've got NSXs and CRVs, and they're the only ones, genuinely, that will give them to journalists and say, drive this for a week in the rain and in the highway and in the city and park it in the city. And what Honda wants to prove is how long they last, and they want to show that a new car is engineered with the same capacity as this car, and they want to remind people of their heritage.
And it's a really cool opportunity. Honda wants to see this car used. They want to see it driven cross country. And we're just some guys with cameras that have a cool opportunity to do exactly that. So I think it would be a really potentially cool video.
And now it has a chance to go out on the roads where it was engineered for, and we're going to be very careful with it. We're not going to break it, but we are going to use it like a car.
Yeah, and again, it's also been said that really this car has never been the star, because it's always been parked next to NSXs and race cars.
It's always been the beige wagon.
And S2000, so it gets largely ignored. Now, with this video series, this car has a potential to be a star, to be looked at by hundreds of thousands of people and actually get used, and I think that's a cool opportunity. I hope we get to do it.
So we're pretty close case. We need tires. We're going to buy new tires for it. We need to replace a section of the exhaust but keep the current section of the exhaust. We need to finish tuning the idle on the carburetor. We need a new brake light switch, and then, believe it or not, this car is ready for action.
Yeah, and it's already way better off than it was because it's running, but we can make it still even better than that.
So folks, let us know what you think in the comments below. We'd love to hear your criticisms and your concerns, but we'll be sure to update you and keep you in the loop.